Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm George. First, I just want to say that we've noticed that 80 to about 85% of our viewers are not subscribed. So if you haven't already, hit that like and hit that subscribe button. We've broken about 400 or 500 likes before in the last few weeks. I think the highest grossing video we've ever had like over 2,000 likes. I want to see if we can break that 1,000 like challenge today with this video as we progress on with the engine prep. Now that we're waiting for the final couple seals to come in for the transmission, we need to keep moving forward so we have more progress. So we are prepping the stock 3.2 liter VR6, aka R32 engine. We're going to be removing the timing covers, sealing them up. We're going to be installing the valve cover. We're going to be removing the stock oil pan, installing the Mark V oil pump that has a lower pro on it. And I have it right here, along with the aftermarket iBed Industries pan and a lot of other goodies that came from iBed, which I'm really excited to kind of throw these on and get it ready. We're going to be reusing a lot of the materials you see here on the built motor when it finally comes back from the machine shop and we start assembling it. But right now, we need to keep moving forward so we can get everything back in the engine bay and not have a chair in my RS3 engine bay and start the wire up. So those seals should be in the next few days, and while we're waiting for that, this motor will get prepped in this episode. So without further ado, I'm George. Welcome back to the channel. This is the VR6 Audi Rs3 build series, and I thank you again for joining us as we progress forward in trying to get to the wire up and fire this up. So let's kick this off. Let's get this girl together. The timing covers are off. I cleaned with a razor the mating surfaces as best as I could, took off the oil pan. Look how giant this oil pump is compared to the Mark V that has a smaller silhouette. Let me see if I can pull this out. So it basically, this will mount basically right there in its place. It's about what, almost 2 inches shorter. So this will allow us to put in the low profile oil pan that has some built-in fittings already for the turbo return and some various other, baffling kind of properties that the stock pan does. And while there is some minor baffling in there, we also have a little bit more volume in the iron bed oil pan that's made for the transverse setup. But just look at that huge difference now in just height. So we're going to be junking the AK Touareg R32 pump and getting rid of that, and then installing the Mark V R32 oil pump that has a lower profile. And then I got to clean the timing cover. So I'm not reusing the oil pan. There's a lot of gunk and nastiness in there, but the upper timing cover doesn't look pretty either. So I'm going to just wire wheel that real quick, clean it up, rinse it, clean the mating surface on that. That's also a Mark V R32 timing cover that can clear the transmission. And we'll get into that as we're, mating the transmission on part 3. But right now, let's get this oil pump on, clean these mating surfaces, get the oil pan on, get the rear timing covers on, and get this thing sealed up so we can start installing all the other cool tidbits and beauties that I have right here to get this motor ready to fire. So we have the upper, lower timing covers installed, resealed as best as we could. Again, this is the stock R32/Touareg motor that we have spare that we're going to be running inside the car, and the oil pan is on. As you saw in the time lapse, I ended up installing the baffles and the oil return line for the turbos on the driver's side. And I'll explain that again once we start putting the car together. But now I'm going to be removing these stock hoses, these oil fittings. I'm going to be installing the oil cooler right over here and get that mounted. And then we're going to turn it back up, install the timing cover, the gaskets, the individual gussets that go in the center. And we'll get this almost done, guys. It's pretty much almost ready to fire up. We have the motor pretty much, it's ready to go. It's ready to fire up. It's sealed up. Timing covers are on. I installed the flywheel, thermostat housing that we customize, and we'll get into that as we're assembling the transmission on and making the coolant lines on part 4 as you guys progress along. We have the iBed Industries oil filter housing that allows for the oil cooler from Mocal, so we can run a conventional oil filter as opposed to the RS3 had like a plastic cap, and it was annoying as hell to pretty much change oil on it. Even on the regular VR6s, this simplifies a lot. We have an extra tap on here we're going to cap off. We may put a oil temp, oil pressure sensor on there, or we may cap it off to something on the side, but right now our oil turbo feed is pretty much going to be coming off this housing. The valve cover looks absolutely stunning. So I don't know if you guys noticed some differences. We've been posting nothing but pictures of this just sitting on the engine. Now the gasket is on. We also use the Schimmel Performance hardware kit that we ended up picking up from Bill and it looks amazing. Absolutely looks amazing. I think it looks flawless. Really, you know, again, the HST billet cover really modernizes the 24 valve VR6, brings it into the, you know, 2021 pretty much. But now this hardware kit, again, they are silver, so they are actually better. We have our coil packs we're going to be using. We're using the Passat W8 coil pack, same thing we're using on the 2.8s, the VR6s. We got the iBit Industries block off plate and coolant pretty much feed for the head. We also went with the Schimmel Performance stud kit for the turbo manifold, which is really nice too. It comes with these really nice washers. Check this out, guys. So washers, and then these beautiful, beautiful, pretty much ARP nuts that go on there for securing hardware. Now we're going to be reusing a lot of this stuff. As again, this is just the stock 3.2 we're using just for the startup. We're actually be pretty much taking off 80% of this stuff and transferring it over to the built block, but we can't just sit and wait. We need this car to be ready for wire up and firing here in the next few weeks so we can get that sorted, done with, sort out any leaks, make sure that the coolant lines work properly, get the air conditioning up and going. Again, this is going to be a rolling, functioning Audi Rs3, pretty much how we were driving the car before, ripping it at the track, driving it every day, having some fun, and then later on down the line completely turn this thing into a drag monster. But I think we're going to be able to perform and really get some cool numbers with this engine setup and the Cyvex and Unitronic combo working in the car. That being said, the Rs3 uses the same flywheel in the transmission, except this is a 10 bolt. The Rs3 uses an 8 bolt. So this is the VR6 version of the DQ500 flywheel, which is really cool. And again, we sent out in the last episode, we talked about sending out a spare and a clutch pack to DCT, courtesy of Assam over at iBed. Thank you very much for sending that out so we can get that built, and then we'll swap those out later on too. The stocks just won't last long. These plates, again, even with 700-800 wheel, few launches, they'll definitely crack. So before we start making some crazy power, we'll make sure we'll get those swapped out. But this thing is looking good, guys. It's so funny, kind of just it all coming together. And again, the last bits that we're waiting on is just those two seals, pretty much these right here. As soon as they come in from Volkswagen, which should be here in the next few days, we'll install them, seal up that transmission, get it together, mate it onto the engine, and get it back in the base so we can continue wiring up, making coolant lines, oil lines, and getting this thing ready for its first time making some Wookiee noises with this VR6. I think it's the sexiest engine, man. I'm telling you, with the billet valve cover, I don't think in the Volkswagen world there's nothing sexier than the way the VR6 staggered on the coil packs, the way it just kind of gives off that look at that. There's that beautiful kind of stance. I hate to call it stance, but it just looks great. And even in the engine bay, matching with all the silver, I think it's going to look amazing with all the components that we made here in-house. So, oh, guys, we got the motor ready. Part 2 is pretty much done. And as soon as those seals come in, we'll get the transmission ready, slapped onto the engine, and back in there for part 3. And then get this thing ready for the first time. We're going to be wiring this thing up and attempting to start it and fire it here in my home garage. So you saw it here first, world's first Rs3 VR6 swap here in the United States. And we're beyond excited to get this thing rolling in my Rs3 and going fast and making some Wookiee noises and having fun. That's ultimately what this is all about, right? Having fun with family, friends, racing this thing around, breaking shit, and then fixing it, then continuing to go back out there. So I appreciate you guys watching. I'm George. This is Malaka MotorSports, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Secrets and forbidden bliss, can't stay still, don't stop.